Hi, I'm Misha, and if you're new here, I'm writing a book. It's a sapphic psychological thriller, and I'm so excited to announce that I have finished the first draft of my book, which is huge. If you've missed it, I actually vlogged my drafting journey, so I'll go ahead and link some of those in the description below for you to check out if you're interested. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time today just having a little bit of a chit chat, as well as talking through some of the things that I've learned writing this draft. For context, I have drafted 3 other manuscripts before. Only one of those have I tried pursuing traditional publishing. I eventually ended up shelving that manuscript. I talk more about that in my AuthorTube newbie tag video that I'll also link below that speaks more to my journey as a writer. So now that I've done the drafting process a couple of times, it was really interesting to see how every book, as they say, every book is different. And I think the most interesting part of it is learning how to write this book, what it needs to be written. What tools do I need to be able to write this? What research needs to be done? What do I need to put together and gather to be able to write this draft? So I talk about this a little bit in some of my videos, but I call it this exploratory phase. The exploratory period is what I call this whole time before I begin a first draft. It's when I start getting an idea, a very loose, rough, muddled up in nothing, this nudge of this is something to pay attention to. And that's kind of what I start my exploratory phase with. So it's usually a nudge from either a dream or a song that I'm listening to where I feel like it's a character talking to me. And that kind of sends me on this journey of discovering who this character is, what are their greatest fears, what is the concept of the story, what are the main themes that I'm looking for. Because I'm mostly a pantser, the story itself is something that I learn in the first draft. Beforehand, I do a lot of character prep in terms of understanding what their main core personality traits are. No matter what, I learn so much more about them after I finish my first draft, but to be able to get started, I have to reach a point where I feel like I know enough about them. I know enough about the story that they are wanting to share. And it kind of feels like you're uncovering things. I feel like a little bit of a detective when I'm in this phase. And so when I get into the drafting period, for me, that's always been a fairly quick process. Like it takes me maybe like 3 to 4 months sometimes to draft a novel, but that can't happen without all of the information gathering that I do in advance of it. So that's something I already know about my drafting process. The trials and errors to be able to get to the drafting part are always a bit of a question mark. For this particular book that I'm writing, this one was probably the hardest to nail down. I think this character, she was bad. She was tough. She was tough to figure out, and it was worth it to figure her out because I think I'm really looking forward to reading back the story and making it better and curating it in a way that is easily digestible and makes it a lot more rich. With this being my 4th first draft, technically, that I've ever written, there are some things that I've found were very different. The first one being that this is the first draft that I have typed out. I usually write out by hand my first drafts, and even with word counts, it's actually a little bit wild of me, and I don't know how this is going to be received, but usually I still do some word count goals for myself, and I have in the past, but I will actually just count the words after I'm done a writing session. I will physically go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and count the amount of words and then write it down and track it separately. So that's how I've always done it. And then when I go into my second draft, a huge undertaking is typing out the entire thing. It helps me actually read it all the way through for the first time. It is so incredibly hard for me to read without editing. And I think that process of writing it out by hand and then going back in to type it up, I kind of just have to, because I have to just read it and just type it as it is, because I want to get it on the computer so that I can actually start editing, and I'm excited to be able to get into that part of the process. So when I originally wrote about 20,000 words of this draft, that was all handwritten. And then I realized that I needed to scrap this novel, this draft in general, and I needed to rewrite it. That is also new for me. I have not done that before. And it wasn't like a full draft, it was 20,000 words. I actually talk a lot more about the scrapping of a draft in another video that I'll link below, but that was a new thing for me. I think what's really important during these early stages of getting ideas, trying to flesh them out, hearing a character through a song, trying to understand them more, writing journal entries from their perspective, or trying to discover new music where the lyrics or a melody will click with you and really align well with whatever this concept of a story is that you haven't exactly figured out yet. It's all instinctual, and I think that's something that I really lean into and trust so deeply in my writing process. I am practicing doing that better in my personal life, in other areas of my life, but for some reason, I've never questioned an instinct that I have when it's come to that part of the process for writing and trying to flesh out an idea. Like when I knew I needed to scrap the 20,000 words, it was just a knowing. It wasn't something I tried to create a pros and cons list about, because I mean, in other cases, I probably would have done that, but it's not something I tried to rationalize as much. It's just something I knew I had to do because I understood the story better. I thought I would feel a lot more disappointed because I'd already written a little bit that I felt good about, and then I was having to scrap it all. But I actually didn't, and that was pretty shocking. I think it was because I was more excited that I learned something new, and if something felt right and I needed to follow that, and finally I would rather write a story, or at least write a first draft where I am more aligned with how it needs to be written than, you know, write it the wrong way and know that the entire, I don't even know if I could finish the first draft knowing that it would have to start at a different place, that this is the wrong timeline of the story and therefore it's the wrong story, even though it's through this same character's lens. Like, it would just have been a different story, and that wouldn't have made sense. And going into revisions knowing that, I would have had to scrap even the storylines. Instead of right now, I know that, you know, the skeleton of the story is there. I'm still going to be doing full rewrites of it, but I understand the story a lot better now that I've drafted it. If I had continued on past those 20,000 words and wrote it the way that it maybe needed to be written, it would still feel too messy. I think it just made sense in the moment to scrap it. This idea first came to me when I was listening to this song called Sex and Candy that was featured in a series called Little Fires Everywhere. And that's when I visualized my character for the first time and felt this inkling of, there's a something here. This is a character. I need to figure out more about her. And, you know, it was such a small nudge, like these little, it feels like a tap on the shoulder, like these moments that could be nothing. I don't even have a full concept or an idea, or like, I don't have any full basis for what the story is going to be about, so let's just ignore it. And I could have done that, but instead I think it's fun for me to feel like a detective that's like uncovering this world and this story, and, you know, being told it from the lens of these characters. And the ways that I sort of see it, I feel like I'm building a relationship with these characters who are trusting me with their stories and their lives and telling them from such an intimate space. I just want to take my time with these characters because they will trust me if I continue exploring them and listening to these gentle nudges that I'm getting. And eventually I will know these stories a little bit better, and I will continue to over time. I think a big component of drafting, of storytelling, of creativity is just listening to instincts and trusting them. And that's something that I feel very good about when it came to this particular draft, because actually drafting it was an emotional experience. It was really heavy in terms of the content itself and what it brought up in me as I was writing it. But also in the lead up to writing it and drafting it, I think that that part was also very critical to me being able to move forward with the story and really understand it. I can be very type A in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas of my life, but when it comes to writing, for some weird reason, I am a lot more flexible. I do lean into, you know, things just not going the way that I had planned and being like, well, we're just gonna try another way. I don't know. I have no other choice because I would rather be doing it than not. I would rather be exploring this and rewriting it and figuring it out and being lost and confused and all of the stuff that comes with creating anything than not doing it at all. So when it comes to drafting, I'm pretty good at listening to my instincts. That basically allows me to try things differently instead of fixating on, no, I hand wrote my first 3 drafts, or the first drafts of my first 3 manuscripts, I hand wrote those. So I have to handwrite this one. That one was a hard one for me to shift. I'm gonna admit that, because I love handwriting. I feel a lot more connected when I'm handwriting. But this one, when I tried typing it, it was just flowing better. And I had to listen to that, even though I love bringing my like little notebook to coffee shops or libraries with me and just writing down things from there. But that didn't work, and I had to try another way. Something that I also feel like I am starting to notice a little bit better now that I've drafted things a couple of times. I know where my strengths are and also where I can improve. I'm so hyper focused on characters and understanding characters and developing characters, and figuring them out is the funnest part of storytelling, I think. But something that I have noticed throughout time that I do need to pay more attention to and also improve on within my own writing is focusing on setting. For some reason, I just don't think about it, especially when it comes to drafting. Like, it's something I have to really add in and detail out in the second draft because I'm so hyper focused on the characters and their stories. That doesn't mean to say that setting is the most important thing in the novels that I write. I would say it feels secondary, but it's still important, and it's something that I really need to improve on. And I did find that I kept that in the back of my head as I was drafting this. I haven't read back my draft yet, but I'm hoping that I put a lot more thought into setting as I was writing it. I'm hoping I improved on that front, because that is a space where I don't put a lot of thought into in my first draft, to be honest. And I mean, it's fine. I know that's what revisions are for. They're for these things. But I would like to put a little bit more thought into them. And I think I improved on that front with this draft. Another thing that I am not great at is maintaining the same tense throughout the story for the first draft. And again, that is fine. Like, the pacing is going to be off, the tenses are going to be a little bit scrambled, and I'm going to need to really fix that as I go into revisions. But this one, I still feel like I didn't focus on tenses. Like, I'm going to be honest. My tenses are probably like present, past, present. I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see how that is. The pacing is very off, but that, I think, is just a part of the first draft process. That's something that I'm like, I can't know because I don't know the story. So the pacing is going to be off in the first draft no matter what. And what I mean by pacing is more so the first act, I always draw out so much more than the finished product is going to be. It's going to be a lot more condensed. I'm going to flesh out the third act a little bit more. The pacing of the novel in terms of how scenes lead up to each other and how things build up, all of that is something that is a revisions task. So that's not something I really focus on, or even do I care to improve that in my first draft writing process? I don't know, because I like discovery writing. I like discovering the story as I draft it. And I think with doing that, there's going to be like pros and cons to that. And one of the cons is that the pacing is going to be very much like everywhere. It's going to be all over the place, and it might be super slow in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it's like sped up and things are happening, and I want it to feel thoughtful in that sense. The structure can very much be improved. This is probably the first time I don't know how to fully structure it. For instance, in other drafts that I've written, I've known like, ooh, I really want to split this into parts. I don't know whether this one I want it to be in parts. I don't know what the chapters are gonna look like. I just wrote like in Scrivener, I split it up into scenes, and that's how I just broke the story up and wrote a bit of a synopsis of each scene so that when I look back on it, I can see it from a big picture view as well. But this is probably the first one that I'm like, I don't know how I want to structure. I don't know how many scenes I want to put together in a chapter. Like, I didn't split it up into chapters, and I didn't split it up into parts other than the acts and knowing when each act ends. That's something that's a little bit new for me because I usually know what I want the structure to look like, and I don't for this one. So that's something that as I move into the revision phase, I really want to think about critically, because how something is structured is so important to the story and to the book. I'm sure that when I read it all the way through for the first time, which I hope to do mid-September, because I want to take a bit of a break, I will hopefully have some ideas. But right now it's a bit of a question mark. I really just don't know. Another thing that I learned from writing this is something that I've done in other drafts as well. When I'm writing every day or creating these sort of like word count challenges for myself, whatever it looks like, when I end my writing session, I need to end at a part that's exciting for me so that I'm excited to come back to it. I have not always done this. I know that I dread it a little bit more. I procrastinate a little bit more. I feel more hesitant to go back into a story if I know that I'm at a part that I'm feeling stuck at. Even if I'm drafting something that I don't have the answers to, I will try to put some thought into it that same day and won't end my writing session until I'm excited again or feel like I've solved that and I'm back into this flowing mode. I know a lot of people put like brackets of like insert this sort of scene here so that they can come back to it after, which is really smart to do that. I don't know why, but that gives me a lot of anxiety thinking about doing that. So I actually just write out every single scene, putting in brackets of like insert this scene here or like and then this happens, figure this out later. That stresses me out. I want it to not, because it seems like such a strategic way to go. I do put comments to myself of like, I don't know if this is the route I want to go, but this seems okay enough for now. Maybe put some more thought into it in the second draft, and I'll put some notes for myself in that sense, but I'll still draft it all out because it won't feel done for me unless I've written every scene out, even if it's not great, which first drafts are, no matter what, they're not great. So what is the point? What's the point? I also find that, especially with this draft, I find that I do really well with longer word count days. Like when I'm writing big chunks, I feel so in my story and motivated, and I dream more about it. It's way more present in my brain than when I write a smaller word count more consistently. I almost found that, you know, doing those like 1,000 plus and sometimes like 2,000 or 3,000 words a day was better for me. And this is when having a job and writing at the same time, you know, they butt against each other. In an ideal world, I would have even more time to write, and I always try to make the most of the time that I do have. But I really do appreciate the weekends for the amount that I'm able to write within them. I try to write as much as I can on weeknights, but I just better able to, you know, feel like I'm deep in my story during the weekend because I can just not have any plans that day. And then I can be like writing all day if I wanted to. I can just do that. Another thing that I have known but just has very much sparked back up in me is I love writing first drafts. I know usually people don't, but I really enjoy it. I think just the act of discovering this story is the most interesting thing in the world to me. Like I'm just discovering a story. For what reason? None. Because I want to. How fun. I take writing both seriously and not seriously at the same time. Like, I take my ideas very seriously, and I also have it in the back of my mind that like, you're just writing a story. In terms of like my work life, I am working in advocacy, and so the stakes are actually a lot higher in terms of what I'm doing and what the outcomes mean. But what is the worst that can happen when I'm just writing a story for fun? The people don't like it. So, I'm kidding. I really want to create something that people will like too. I do really enjoy the first draft process, and I'm really hoping to, shake up my revision process a little bit and streamline it more. And I'm so curious as to what will come out of that. In terms of what I've learned from the first draft, I will still have a lot of questions after it, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to finish your first draft and still have these lingering questions and, not know where those fit in or how those fit in or how those can be resolved. There's things that I wrote that I'm like, I still don't know what to do with them. There's a character that I still don't know what to do with. And I'm going to deal with that during revisions. I'm going to see if I have to delete her completely or if I need to flesh her out more, or if there's any point of her being in the story, or if it's just something I found fun for the time being and it doesn't actually add to the story whatsoever. I think just being comfortable with uncertainty, which in the same way that with following my instincts, like I'm not perfect at it in any other area of my life. Being comfortable with uncertainty for some reason when I'm writing is something that I'm okay with. I'm okay being uncertain about a lot of things because I kind of just trust that I'm going to figure them out. And if I don't, that's why there's like beta readers, that's why there's alpha readers. What I love about revisions is that as I move further and further along in my drafts, I'll begin to bring more and more people in, which is terrifying, but also exciting because I love the collaborative aspect of it. In so many ways, writing a first draft is a huge accomplishment in terms of like a first step that you just did, and it's a big first step. But what's also exciting is that it's just the beginning, and I don't want to be done. I love this story and I want to make it really good, and I want to rewrite it completely, and I want to edit it and break it and delete characters, edit things out, look at it line by line. I want to do so much more with it, and that brings me a lot of joy. Like when I finished my first draft, I was so sad. I was very emotional. But I think what was exciting was knowing and reminding myself that like there is so much more you have to do. And I love that. I think the longevity of this process is something that actually excites me. And I think that that's something that you kind of have to enjoy if you want to write books. It's such a long process and you kind of have to like that. And as someone who feels deeply attached to this book, I don't want to let it go. I have a lot more to do with it. And I'm very excited that I will be getting back into it soon. I already feel like the break is so long. I know some people step away from their first draft for like months, for like 3 to 6 months. I was going to step away from it for 2 weeks, but because I finished earlier than I thought I would, I actually get a full month. And I think that'll be good. I think it'll be good to have the month to gain perspective, but I don't know if I can do more than that because I really want it. Like if it was my choice, I would dive in right now. I want to go back in it, but we're not going to. We're gonna wait. So that's kind of what I learned throughout this process, and some of what's been different for this particular process versus other drafts that I've written in the past. I hope that I can continue to learn and grow as I move through the next phases that are coming up pretty soon. Thank you so much for watching. I would also love to know in the comments below how you feel about first drafts. Do you have a favorite part of the novel writing process or just the writing process in general? That is all I have for you today, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye.